Gosh, it's October. I still can't believe it. I'm not entirely sure that it's true that it's already October, especially considering it's a beautiful day outside. So I'll take that. But yeah, it's October for anybody who hasn't been paying attention to the calendar. Something's going around. I know some people on our team have got it. I've got it. We'll see how long my throat lasts. I really shouldn't have a cigar, but talking about Illinois politics, I don't think I'll get bored more than a couple minutes in before having to light up. I think we can just charge my future throat cancer to Illinois politics. Let's see if I can bill it maybe somehow. I'm a consultant, right? We bill for everything. Anyways, let's get into politics. I'll stop wasting time. We've got two guests this week who've been with us before, so they know the drill. You know them already, but let me do some introductions. We've got Tom Demmer, former state representative, also the president of the Lee County Industrial Development Association, and a senior fellow at the Illinois Policy Institute for Fiscal Policy. What's up, Tom? Thanks for being here.
I'm glad to be back.
We have a handful of guests that often get, we get notes back like, hey, we like them, have them on. And this week we've got two of them. We've got you, Tom. We've got Sharon. So this could be one of our best episodes yet. Sharon's a policy expert, former Palatine Township supervisor, and a police officer. Sharon Langlotz-Johnson. What's up, Sharon?
Not much, Collin. Just taking care of puppies.
I heard you got a new batch of puppies. Abby's really excited. She wants to come over and see them.
Yep.
If you bring any on screen to help you win an argument, I won't blame you. I mean, listen, fair's fair. It's Chicago politics. So if you use a cute puppy to win an argument, I'm good with it. We've got Michael. We've got Chris. They both have groupies just in different ways. People love to like Michael. They love to hate Chris, but they love you both. So I think you'll take it.
Hey, that's fair. Good balance.
Is it better? Is it hate, Collin, or is it fear? I like to believe that it's fear.
I think we were all afraid that you might be the candidate for comptroller, so there was definitely some fear there.
So, see, what was I saying?
Still be the candidate for treasurer if you want.
No. I exhausted my political capital on the comptroller run, Butler. You're the one who's going to have to run for treasurer.
Tom, do you still have your signs?
Yeah, we'll just cross off Demmer and put Butler in there.
There you go. There you go. You can be Tom Butler.
Tom too, though. It's not gonna work.
Tom Butler has a good ring to it. I'm good with that. Or Michael Demmer, like, either of these works. We got to be fiscally responsible. We can't cross off too much.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, we're going to start politics this week. We got to start with politics this week. People seem to like that last week. I still want you to stick around for policy because we've got some juicy stuff we've got to talk about. Veto session in Illinois is coming up in less than 2 weeks. So if you're watching this episode, don't just watch the politics and skip past the policy, but we will give you the politics first. You can have your Sunday first before we get into the meat and potatoes. And we, of course, have to start with the governor's race. Usually what I'll do is I'll just make it more of like a free-for-all. But there's like a handful of things within this topic that I want to make sure we actually address. So we're going to do this one a little backwards this week. I'm actually going to give us specific topics under the gubernatorial campaign for you guys to go off on and give your thoughts on. And then at the end of this segment, we still haven't gotten to all your thoughts. I'll give you a chance to jump in with anything else you want to add, but I think we can segment this a little bit because there's 5 or 6 things we definitely have to talk about. The first of which is when we recorded our episode last week, it was the day that Darren Bailey was announcing his gubernatorial campaign. So we gave some initial thoughts, but now as of this episode, we've actually seen the rollout and the announcement. So we really do need to start there with Darren Bailey has announced his campaign for governor. His running mate is Aaron Delmar. Open it up for thoughts just on their announcement, their rollout, and them joining this race. Go for it. Whoever wants to jump in.
Do you want me to start with that?
I mean, if we want to start with some fire, I guess we can start with some fire.
First of all, Darren Bailey's a 2-time loser as far as campaigns are coming. Maybe a few people like him down south, but he's had his chance. He needs to go away. His choice for running mate, obviously, I've expressed my concerns with Aaron Delmar before. Coming from Palatine Township, our township had never been represented by a Democrat ever prior to Aaron Delmar becoming our committeeman. And since he's become state central committeeman, he's been Cook County Republican chair. It's gotten even worse. We've lost every Republican position within the state, the U.S., the federal side. But Worse, he gave away 2 Democrat positions at the township. He gave 2 Democrats positions on his slate. So I'm sorry, but I've been a Republican all my life. I worked for Jim Edgar's campaign in 1990. This isn't the kind of people that we need running our state, let alone representing the things that we value, because the things that we value are not what Aaron Delmar values. He doesn't value, everybody getting along. He doesn't know how to do that. It's just the way he has run the organization that he is running right now is just, it's abysmal. They don't even have any precinct captains anymore. Or if they do, it's very few. Nobody ever comes by anybody's houses anymore. The entire system's gone, and it's under his watch.
Expected you to bring some strong opinions to the episode this week. So we made a rule with SFR this year. We're going to have people on both sides on, and we're going to let them just share their thoughts. So we've had pro-Bailey people on. We've had pro-Dabrowski people on. We've had anti-Bailey, anti-Dabrowski people on. This is going to continue to be an open forum all the way through March 17th. After that, we're one team. We're all on the same team. But until March 17th, we've got to hash this out and make sure that we pick the best possible candidate. So we will continue to have a wide variety of people on the episode as we move forward. Tom, I'm curious if you've got some thoughts on this.
Yeah, looking at what candidates we have in the race aside, I think just focusing on what's the initial reaction from the announcement. The interesting part with this ticket is that both Darren and Aaron were on the ballot 4 years ago. And so I think it really, folks have to say, okay, you tried before, what's different this time? Yep. And I actually thought that the announcement was received with a lot of coverage that they would have been happy with. A lot of people have said, okay, the message this time around is I need to focus more on Chicago, on the suburbs. I need to learn some of the lessons from last time. Like right out of the door, that's part of the message that has to be out there. It has to be a message to voters about what's going to be different this time around that you didn't have there 4 years ago. Now, the merits of all that and what that actually means and, getting into the details of it, that's super important. But the first thing you have to at least do is get people to be open to the idea that it's going to be different this time than it was 4 years ago. And by and large, the coverage that I saw opened that door and said, I think Darren hit that many times in the speeches he gave and the remarks he had with the media, that he was going to try to do things differently this time. And so I thought, if you're grading it based on what was the message that you wanted to have out there and what message was out there, I think they did a pretty good job of getting out there the idea that it can be different. I tried to learn from last time, and you're not going to see the same campaign that was run 4 years ago just run again today.
Yeah, and that's what we've all been asking for, right? That because we've been promised, we've been told that this race is going to be different, that this time it's going to be different. So we've been asking, what does that mean? What does that look like? And so far in the rollout, you did see some different. We talked about, I think, last week or the week before, that it's easy to control it early and say, here's how it's going to be different. I want to see in your actual actions over the next 5.5 months, is it actually different? But you're right. I do think that some of the press coverage, actually a lot of the press coverage that they got in that rollout fits the narrative that I would imagine they wanted, as you said, Tom, that this time is going to be different.
And you hit the thing. It's very important that there actually be the actions to back up the initial message. But look, for the announcement, the message had to be out there. At least people had to be open to the possibility it was going to be different. I think they succeeded with that. So the really tough part, though, is the details and carrying that out and being disciplined to stick to that over the course of the campaign. But, day one, they probably got what they were looking for.
Yeah. Michael, Chris, you guys got thoughts?
Anecdotally, well, I think Tom was touching on a very valuable point that, they're trying to do something different this time as opposed to 4 years ago. One thing that I think has been different about this announcement as opposed to Bailey's previous announcement and Bailey's previous campaign is it's not as much energy as there was 4 years ago. Bailey announced last time, coming off the heels of the anti-mask stuff, on the anti-lockdown stuff, he was the conservative firebrand who was going to reopen our schools, who we always made that joke 4 years ago. He was the guy who was going to take it to Pritzker and lead a conservative revolution in the state of Illinois. Obviously didn't. But now you have people who were perhaps open to Bailey 4 years ago or even supportive of Bailey 4 years ago, they want something else. At least that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people I saw circulate for Darren Bailey 4 years ago not even sign his petition because they're done with it. He's had his chance. He didn't win. And I think the Republican Party in this state is looking for something different than Darren Bailey. It could have been Aaron Delmar. He decided to be the lieutenant governor choice for Darren Bailey, and that's his decision. It could be Ted Dabrowski, but he has to take advantage of that. And it could have been Jim Mendrick. And up until this point, it hasn't indicated that it's going to be Jim Mendrick. But again, it could have been Jim Mendrick as well. I think the Republican, not establishment, but the Republican infrastructure, as I always say, to whatever extent that exists, wants something new. So while I believe Darren Bailey will get on the ballot, no problem. He'll show up with as many signatures as he needs, plus whatever amount he can get. He'll get on the ballot. I think Darren is going to have a problem early on that many of his supporters from last time, be they vigorous or more lackluster, aren't going to be there for him this time. He'll have his strong supporters, true, but he has to rekindle that energy. Because if he does everything differently in terms of I'm going to message better to suburbs, I'm going to message better to Cook County, none of that matters if nobody actually wants to help the guy. So that's kind of my big point this week. And I'll finish with this. I've been Aaron Cuts the Best Deals Del Mar's biggest supporter on this podcast in terms of the Palatine Township question. So I will respectfully continue to disagree with Sharon on that question. Always cut a deal, folks, because it might be you can end up with 6 instead of 0.
Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I think a lot of good points have been made, but that's what the voters are looking for. Republican primary voters want to know that, okay, if we give Darren Bailey a second chance, another attempt at this governor's race, that it's going to be different. And I know that, there's been a lot of conversations about that. There's been people kind of in Bailey's orbit promising, me and others that it's going to be different, but they're going to have to prove that. And if they're not able, if their actions don't match that language, those conversations, voters are going to say, okay, well, maybe we need to take a good look at Dabrowski or Mendrick or somebody else and see if that's the direction that we want to go. And I would agree with Chris that, there's a lot of people that were, stalwart Darren Bailey supporters. They were at every event. They were circulating petitions. They were county coordinators, etc. in 2022 that are not really on board right now. They're either, kind of halfway, involved, or they're seriously considering supporting a different candidate altogether. And I think, there's a lot of people in central and northern Illinois that kind of got a break from that Bailey campaign, right? Because he was on the ballot statewide in 2022. He wasn't in 2024. So I think there's a little bit of, amnesia or short-term memory loss or something about some of the things that, transpired. And then obviously they didn't experience those fights in 2024. So I think that is going to be an issue. And I think that, Darren might not get as much support downstate as what people are expecting, because there's still, for some people, a little bit of hangover from, March of 2024. They haven't gotten over that. And I know Darren's been talking to people trying to, address that. And, I wish him the best, and hopefully he's genuine in those conversations, because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, I mean, listen, in this election, it's going to be about a choice. And I think I am hearing similar things to what you guys are hearing, that support for Bailey this time is a little more tepid maybe than it was before. But here's the reality. So far, most of them aren't really being given an alternative. And what I mean is, Michael, I've talked to people who are in the camp that you say, who were pro Bailey before, and now they're kind of hoping for an alternative. They haven't been contacted by one of those alternatives. There's been no reach out to say from the Dabrowski campaign or the Mendrick campaign or from the candidates themselves saying, hey, we'd love to have you on board. There hasn't been that effort. And so I think what these other campaigns need to recognize is that time is not on their side. Darren starts several laps ahead here. And so if you're not making those phone calls, taking those meetings, building up that support, at a certain point, they will say, well, I guess Darren's our guy. Like, you got to understand they may back into their previous position even if they weren't excited about it. And so, yes, it may be true that there's an opening for these other candidates. It is true. But so far, none of them's driving a Mack truck through that opening. And every day that opening is going to shrink a little bit more each time.
Collin, if the problem comes is going through whoever we end up with, can that person win?
Nope.
And Bailey can't beat Pritzker. We all know it. He just can't. I don't know that I would vote for him, Republican or not. And I know a lot of people that are like, oh no, I don't like that guy. I would never vote for that guy. I would rather not vote, which is even worse. But we got to pick someone that can beat Pritzker. That's really all that matters right now.
Yeah.
And who can do it?
And I think if you look at the announcements, I said I'd evaluate because part of the point of this podcast is to push us to be better. You look at the Google trends and you look at the social media activity. Got to be fair and say that the Bailey rollout, the Bailey campaign announcement was more impactful. It did move the numbers more than Dabrowski's did. There were some mistakes, which I'll go over next. But you look at the Google trends, you look at, social media activity especially, but you would assume that they'd dominate social media. But they did it better. Multiple events, not just in one location. They promoted it better. They had a really solid message at the start. I'll give them credit for it. There's definitely some signs of positivity here with the campaign and with the rollout that I think we got to be fair to point out. And as we've said, there are some signs that they may be trying to, do this one a little differently. I also think the North-South concept is intriguing. We've got an election right now where Democrats are essentially running all candidates from Chicago and Cook County. There's one outlier. We'll see what happens. But in general, Democrats are the party of Chicago and Cook County. And so this idea of representing more than just one county, I think is going to be big for us. 63% of the general election vote is outside of Cook County. And so if you've got candidates who can speak to voters in the collar counties, in the suburbs, and then, yes, central, western, southern, northwestern Illinois, that's going to be a big thing for us because a lot of these Democrats can't speak to voters. You're talking about how Bailey struggles to speak to voters in the suburbs, and it's true. A lot of these Democrats can't speak to voters outside of the suburbs at all. And in the other 96 counties, there's a lot of voters. So there's some regionality that can come to our benefit in this election if we play it right. And so far, the Bailey ticket's the only one that's really regionally diverse, whether you like the candidates or not. They are at least playing that smartly politically. So there are some positives here with the Bailey rollout that we got to be sure we say to be fair.
Yeah, but Collin, with all due respect, the Democrats haven't had a problem with the fact that they can't communicate with the rest of the state.
That's just because we're so inept. That's not because they're so good.
Well, again, what you're saying here is that, aren't you basically we're talking about this, talk about the ineptitude of the Darren Bailey and Aaron Del Mar campaign at this point. So are we really going to expect that they're going to take advantage of the lack of Democrats messaging to rural voters who they haven't been able to win in, I don't know, Butler, you tell me. When was Glenn Bouchard on the ballot?
Chris, I wouldn't say expect, but I would say force, maybe. If we can push our candidates to be better, I'm not going to write off this next cycle just because we failed cycle after cycle. Otherwise, why are we here? Why are we in Illinois? Why are we doing this stupid podcast? Yes, I recognize the failures of the past, but I'm not resigned to just assuming those failures will happen again this time around. Yeah, we got some work to do, Chris, but that's part of why we're here doing this podcast is to push us to be better.
Well, to push everybody on the podcast to be better, in line with what the Bailey campaign stated goal is to do better in the suburbs. It's like the Democrats are winning partially because they're doing very well in the suburbs. If you were the Darren Bailey campaign, if you're watching this podcast, I don't know if you're Colin Mosley, and now you're part of the Darren Bailey campaign, Colin Mosley. I just named you. I don't care. I don't care if you are. If you have nothing to do with it, you're part of it, and for this purpose, okay? You gotta figure out how to do better in the suburbs than you did 4 years ago. The Democrats, they aren't thinking about, what the Saline County voter thinks about. And that's okay. You're going to win the Saline County voter. I'm telling you that right now. You are going to win that Saline County voter.
But it's like Chris looked at a map and learned Saline County existed for the first time today.
Saline County is right next to Franklin County, Colin, so I know that. It better be, or else I'm going to look really stupid right now. But seriously, if you are the Darren Bailey campaign or a statewide Republican campaign, while you're going to win the votes in Saline County, you got to find a way to win the voters of Schaumburg as well.
Tom's been trying to jump in. Go ahead, Tom.
I just think it's important that we don't say that just simply selecting a running mate from a certain part of the state gives you an opportunity to speak to voters from that part of the state. To be fair, Darren Bailey had a suburban running mate 4 years ago too. That was not the secret, magic of having geographic diversity. You got to talk about the issues, understand what people in those parts of the state are talking about, what they're concerned about, the solutions that they're looking for. Just having a certain regional identifier behind you does not give you really much more than a familiarity with where you might want to stop by when you're campaigning there.
True, true. That's a good point. As I said, we'll go to our next topic next. Let's finish off in the announcement. I mentioned that this announcement was better, but still not perfect. And I got to be fair. I got to point out things that we can always do better. So let's talk about a few of the things from the announcement that I didn't think were super great. First was I thought Darren and Aaron's speeches were actually pretty good. But the other speeches, Christina was good. She was fine. I think Chris or someone disagrees with me on that in our internal Discord, but I thought Christina was fine. I had a problem. The Benny Ray Harmony speech, that was a problem. If she's on the campaign trail for that campaign and she's given that speech, then we're not just going to have the Darren Bailey of 4 years ago. We're going to have the Darren Bailey of, like, I don't know, even more so. I mean, it was that speech does not play. I mean, the quote, "Does J.B. Pritzker even own a Bible?" I think, Michael, you pointed out. I mean, he's Jewish, so
He's Jewish.
let's maybe not force our religion on the guy, but it was bad. It was cringeworthy. I don't know. I didn't know anything about her before she made the news for quitting her job, and I thought maybe she had a lot of potential, but I saw that speech and I was like, oh, maybe let her go to DC and let's not have her on the campaign trail.
I'm sorry, Collin.
You cut out. I didn't hear you.
I said, who was it again?
Benny Ray Harmony. She gave one of the three speeches before Aaron and Darren went up and gave their speeches. So look it up and watch it. And maybe to the Bailey campaign. I talked to a number of people even associated with the campaign, and they were like, yeah, we even admit it was a bit much. So anyways, I'll continue. Doing it Thursday, especially with your main event Thursday night for the announcement, is only slightly better than Dabrowski's mistake of doing it on a Friday. Not to do a major announcement on a Thursday night before people are mostly just giving up going into the weekend. It's better than doing it on Friday. But I mean, let's face it, it's only a hair better than doing it on Friday. So that was also a bit of a mistake doing it Thursday night. I know they had other events that day, but the main one was Thursday night. Doing it at the Drake Hotel, again, only slightly better than Ted Dabrowski doing it outside his $2 million home. I don't understand how we don't get optics as Republicans. I know their other two stops were in better locations. I know they wanted the excitement of a ballroom, but mostly it was just people sitting in theater rows. It wasn't really overly exciting, kind of to Chris's point. So you could maybe have come up with a better visual than the Drake's ballroom. And then some other stuff. The website doesn't have the disclaimer at the bottom as required by law. Maybe if you run for office as many times as Darren Bailey has, maybe you should know stuff like that. They did great in the announcement with 3 issues: crime, education, affordability. It was awesome, but I don't know, on the website they list 4 for some reason. They throw property taxes as a 4th issue. Again, candidates, this isn't hard. 3 issues. That is the rule in politics. Everybody else gets it. I don't know why in Illinois we just refuse to follow that. There's studies done, there's research done, there's reasons for it. 3 issues. That's it. And keep the same 3. If you look on their website and some of their social media posts, it's 3 always, except for, on the issues page. But it's jumps around. Sometimes taxes is one of the 3, or opportunity is one of the 3, or jobs. Be consistent, pick 3, stick with it. It's basic. It's not hard. They're still highlighting the kickoff event on their website a week later. Not the best look for anybody who goes to the webpage. The event calendar, don't even put it up there because it's got one event every 2 weeks. It just looks like you're not going anywhere. Honestly, in today's politics, I wouldn't put an event calendar up, just for security. Maybe not tell people a month in advance where you're going to go, especially considering the left already tried to come out to one of your kickoff events to protest you. So maybe don't advertise where you're going, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks ahead of time. And then on social media, on Darren Bailey's Facebook page, he's still promoting his book as the main headline in the header image, and hasn't updated some of the about language. Aaron's Facebook page still has a photo of him running with Rabine and the sign Rabine Del Mar. Maybe, change that header image. You're running with a different candidate now. Aaron's neither of them have updated their about text. Aaron never uses his X account, so this is ticky-tack, but he hasn't updated it either. As a matter of fact, ironically, the last tweet Aaron made was when he retweeted Capital Facts when they took a pot shot at us on their blog, and Aaron retweeted it. So that's literally the last tweet Aaron made back in April. So maybe get on there, updated, and since you're running for lieutenant governor on what's supposed to be the front runner ticket. So not as many errors as the Dabrowski campaign. I did that to be fair since I did it to Ted. So I did that to be fair. But part of this is we got to get better, guys. Whether you're running for governor or running for state rep, you got to get better. I would contrast this with Gabby Shanahan, who announced for state rep, who's one of my OGs this week, and I'll just do it early. I mean, their messaging was solid. They had a great video. It was crisp. It was awesome. It was frankly even better than the last time when she ran. Like, if we could do it for state rep, we could do it for governor. Like, come on, we could do better. We got to be better. So that's my final thought on the announcement. Let me get us to the next topic here under Bailey, which is fundraising. Obviously we've got the news this week that Ted Dabrowski got his Uline check. It's less than we were all told it was going to be, but $250,000 is $250,000. So kudos to Ted for getting that check from Uline. On the other end of the spectrum, there's been just one A1 filed by Bailey and his campaign just for $1,000 since the announcement. I know they're doing a lot of low dollar contribution fundraising. I get it. So we got to wait to see until they file their report. It looked like Gary Rabine put something out that he would do a $30K match if they raise the $30K. So maybe there's some more money coming. But if you're going to only raise $1,000 before the end of the quarter, then you probably should just wait to put your to file or to roll your campaign out until October 1st. Like, it makes you look weak. And one of our biggest struggles and concerns with the Bailey campaign was fundraising last time, because he may have had a good message last time, but without the money to put behind it, nobody heard it. So one of the areas of growth we are looking for out of Darren Bailey is fundraising. And so far, it's a very, very, very small sample size. But what we've seen over the last week, not so great. But Dabrowski, I mean, yes, $250,000 is $250,000, but let's be real. Getting $250K out of Uline is kind of like, hey, leave me alone, kid, money. I mean, it's not, when he cares about your campaign, it's $1 million, it's $5 million, it's $10 million. $250K is, please stop calling, I'll just give you some cash. So again, it's $250K. Bailey doesn't have it, but let's not pretend like this is Uline going all in just yet. So I think on both sides, we're seeing not the great signs on fundraising that we would like to see. Anybody else have thoughts on fundraising? By the way, I've depressed myself enough that I am going to light my cigar, so we'll see what happens.
I think the fundraising piece is incredibly important, but it's also about thinking about when those dollars get raised and when they get spent. If the idea is we'll just try to limp through this primary, come out on top in the primary, and then I'm sure the money will be there. It's not going to be there. You're waiting far too long on that. JB Pritzker is going to have, in any scenario, a massive fundraising advantage during a general election. But if you can start to prime some of the messages earlier on, if you can build a primary campaign around issues that you're going to be able to build upon in the general election, then you start to plant some of those seeds with people. You start to change a little bit of a narrative. Maybe there's some media stories that come on along to reiterate the message. Other Republican candidates up and down the ballot start to be able to buy into some of that messaging that's successful. Being able to raise money early on and spend it on messages that are going to carry you through general election day, I think is one of the strongest things you can do in a primary, especially if you see yourself as a front runner in the primary right now. If you can start to prime those messages for later, that's just critically important. So I totally agree with you, Collin, that having people are really watching those things closely, trying to understand who's got a viable shot to be able to deliver a competitive message against JB Pritzker next November. You've got to think very strategically about how you make the most out of the deposits and the A1s you can file, and how you make the most out of those matching gifts or the most out of those large gifts. Those things all have to be done in a way that kind of continues to build momentum rather than, I think one of the concerns on the Dabrowski side is, did you play some of those cards really early, and will you be able to sustain that? Can you keep up those six-figure fundraising checks for any period of time, or does it look like you had a chance and now things have quieted down? That fundraising message is really important.
Well, and especially in a gubernatorial race where there is built-in interest in defeating JB Pritzker. Like, if you're running for state rep and nobody knows you, okay, I understand fundraising is difficult. But when it comes to like the Dabrowski campaign, the Bailey campaign, I can tell you I've done this for a long time. Fundraising at that point is 99% effort. Like, when you call and say, I'm one of the top 2 frontrunners to take out JB Pritzker, you get right through the gatekeeper and you actually get to talk to the donor. Like, it's 99% effort. We have seen people who've been able to raise tremendous amounts of money with no personality, no likability. Like, it is a lot of just effort. And We didn't see that out of Bailey last time around. As you said, Tom, clearly, Ted had been planning to run for a while. He had lined up some checks for a while. Those are all in the account now. We're all wondering what comes after that. What's next? What's the sustainability versus sort of that initial pop? But for both these campaigns, this is just the start. Like, we need to see that sustained effort. And it's early for Bailey. It's early for Ted. So, we're waiting. We want to see it. But, we're going to need to see some more for sure. Next topic on this I want to jump to is, let's go to this, endorsements. So in the last week, Ted Dabrowski rolled out a few endorsements. They had an event, I believe, on Monday where they had Jeannie Ives, Tom Morrison, and Bob Grogan do an endorsement of the campaign. I think they've had a few others since then. I was trying to pull up the list and find them, and I missed them. But they've had a handful of endorsements. Haven't seen the Bailey campaign roll out endorsements over the last week just yet. But anything on endorsements you guys have either seen or want to talk about?
It seems like there's still a great deal of the state party infrastructure who's just out of it. They just haven't chosen a side. Just like I was talking about earlier, like, if you don't like Darren Bailey, you're clearly not going to endorse Darren Bailey, even if he picks up the phone and calls you. But you're also not necessarily just going to jump on board the Ted Dabrowski campaign just because he's gotten some checks and he's not Darren Bailey. There are some people who will do that, certainly. But, one thing a campaign is supposed to do, and what you can do if you give yourself enough time to do this, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, is to call the influencers. Call the people who you want to get endorsements. Usually, if you're running for governor of Illinois, there are the low-hanging fruit. These are like your close personal political network. Like, these are the guys you could run for dog catcher, they're endorsing. You could run for president, they're endorsing. Like, you get those out of the way early, and then you start working outwards and outwards. You get started introducing yourself to people. That's how a campaign's supposed to go. And it doesn't seem like either campaign, and I'm saying either because there's really only two, but like, it doesn't seem like either major campaign has done that yet. And I think that for a while, there's going to be a lot of people on the sidelines asking themselves what they're going to do, and they're going to stay neutral. Or alternatively, here's the interesting thing here, guys, is that if you don't do much of a campaign and you're lacking for endorsements, you're at risk to have somebody try and take over your campaign. It's like, this guy's got nothing going on. I don't want Darren Bailey to win. I'm going to jump into the Ted Dabrowski campaign. I'm going to commandeer everything. I'm going to jump into the Jim Mendra campaign. I'm going to take over the whole operation because nobody else seems to want my support. So I'm going to go with this other guy who maybe wants my support. I'm going to try and take over. This is a key thing. You need to get your influencers schmoozed early, or you're going to be at risk of them working against you.
Well, and Chris, there's a reason why this topic is named what it is, which is both these campaigns need credibility. Bailey has questions on, are people going to stick with you? I mean, he has all the support he got 4 years ago. The question we all now have is, how many are sticking with him? So if I'm the Bailey campaign, I'm rolling on endorsements to show, look, we're the guys. We've got the momentum. People are sticking with us. So we need to see this pretty soon. The fact that we haven't is a little bit concerning, but it's only been a week, so let's see. If you're the Dabrowski campaign, it's the same deal. You need credibility. We have heard that he has a significant amount of institutional support, people who don't want it to be Darren Bailey. So where is that? You announced Ives, you announced Morrison. I mean, those, we already knew those. We especially knew Ives. She's basically running the campaign. Grogan's on your paperwork. We already knew Grogan. Like, this wasn't news. Like, where's the, if you're the Dabrowski campaign, I want to see you in a different media market every day with this state rep or this former state senator or this county board leader. Like, you should be just rolling these out constantly and showing, look, Republicans aren't with Bailey. Show them that every single bleeping day. So the fact that that's not being done is, again, concerning. We knew Ives was with you. We knew Grogan was with you. We knew Morrison was with you. I know there's others. I know you could go to Peoria and some other places. Do it. Let's go. Like, it. This window's gonna keep tightening. If people don't see that you're running the campaign that could beat Bailey, they're gonna jump on board with Bailey. Because here's the deal: if Bailey's gonna be the nominee, you don't want to be the person who endorsed him on March 16th. If he's gonna be the nominee, you want to be like, oh, I was with you for months. That's just how politics works. So if you keep waiting, don't think you can roll this out and sort of slow roll it to January. This race could be over by January 2nd if you don't get things moving.
Well, and I think both of them kind of have a similar problem just from different angles on the credibility thing, where it's like, yeah, endorsements would be great and you want to roll those out, but in order to get an endorsement lock, you can't necessarily. I don't know that they could use, if they could get the endorsements locked in, they could use the endorsements to prove that they're credible, but people don't think they're credible, so they're not endorsing. So it's like you maybe have to figure out another way to prove some credibility
But
first.
Michael, this comes down
those.
to what were you doing before announcing and who's on your team?
Well,
Because the
yeah.
reality is, I'm not looking for this, but like if I put my name on the ballot, I could have 5, 6, 700 endorsements throughout the state on day one. Like if you've been doing politics and you actually have a network and you've been building relationships, it's not hard to get the first handful of endorsements, let alone several hundred if you're running for something like governor. Like this isn't that difficult. So I do agree with you, Michael, that he may be stuck in a chicken and egg situation. Fine, I get it. But then that raises questions about what you were doing for the last X number of months or years. Because, I mean, obviously Tom was a state rep, so he has that advantage, but Tom could announce for something tomorrow and have a page or 2 or 3 or 6 full of endorsements. Sharon could have pages of endorsements. Heck, Chris had endorsements, and he wasn't even a real candidate. Like it's if you're in the first month now of being a candidate, you've rolled out 3 and plus Jason Plummer. Like that doesn't work. You clearly can do more than that, and that's what we're looking for. Let's go. All right, we're almost done here on this. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see this, and if not, or hear it. If not, I've put you at a disadvantage, and I apologize. But both candidates over the last week were on Patrick Fingston's show, and actually both did pretty decent. So I don't know if you guys heard either of those interviews or not, but I just want to briefly talk about it. Dabrowski did decent for most of the interview. There were a few parts I didn't love it. He was Patrick said you have 0 name ID. He's like, well, I don't have 0 name ID. I have some. Like, yeah, I have the polling data. You have 0 name ID. Nobody knows who Ted Dabrowski is. Even Ted makes the joke. You've seen my work. You don't know my name. Like, so he doesn't have name ID. People have seen wire points. They just don't know Ted's name. So this naivete about, no, I have some name ID. No, you don't. That's why we need you to get moving, because you need to get it up there. And then he talked about he wanted to use social media to slowly build the name ID up. And I was banging the table a little bit, I'll be honest, because that's not going to cut it. And then the conversation back and forth, Patrick kind of pinned him down on his running mate. We all still kind of have questions on why he chose that running mate. And his response was all about trans issues, which we talk about Bailey having problems in the general. It's not going to play super great for Ted in the general, but, Prof knows better than I do, so whatever. But he did have some great parts. On the question about Trump, he was able to turn that around and make it about Pritzker. It took him 2 minutes to do it. He needs to tighten that up, but it was a good job spinning that and turning that. And he did a great job contrasting with Bailey, talking about how they could win the suburbs. His campaign could. Obviously, he needs to prove that, but that was a good line. That again, if they tightened it up, it could have been really good. So we had some great moments in the interview. Bailey also did, and that's not a super friendly audience. Fingston and Bailey are like water and oil. But Bailey did pretty good. His answer on property taxes was a bit of a disaster, but Ted's wasn't awesome on that either. But there was something Bailey said. This is the whole reason why I'm bringing this up, because I thought this was kind of brilliant. And I don't know if it was a throwaway line or if it was intentional. I hope it was intentional. There was a part where Fingston asked him about his twang and his accent, which, let's be real, is a huge impediment for him in the election. Aaron made jokes about it. It was pretty funny when he made jokes about it at the announcement. Darren handled it really well and talked about how he's actually going to listen more than he's going to talk. And I thought that was actually a super smart way to handle that. And if they do that, if Darren's listening and not talking, then there's no twang. Like if he runs this as, I want to hear from you, I want to hear what is facing you and your family. Number one, then it doesn't matter about his accent. And number two, that's the rule we make for our candidates. When I do trainings, I say, if you're talking more than 50% of the time, then you're not winning as a candidate. You're supposed to be listening. And so if they're going to push that, if that wasn't just a throwaway line, they could have something really good there in the Bailey campaign of like, I want to represent you. This race is about you, not me, some Southern Illinois farmer with an accent. It's about you, and we want to hear what your concerns are and represent you. They could have something good there. So we'll see in the coming weeks if it was just a line or if it's something they want to push. But I thought that had some potential. I don't know. Maybe you guys, I sometimes read too much into stuff.
They can want to push that, but I don't think it's going to happen because that's not either one of their personalities.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it on the floor of the House. I've seen it on, everywhere else around here. I've seen it with Demmer. That's not their personalities. In fact, I eventually see those two clashing very badly because they're very similar personalities, but They both want to be, the star of the show. And I think that there's going to be some big clashing there. Whereas Rabine was more of the relaxed kind of guy. And so they're gonna have a problem.
Yeah, I mean, they are two people who do like to talk, coming from somebody who likes to talk. So, I mean, takes one to know one. But if they pursue that, there could be some potential there. I guess we'll see. All right, last thing here. We'll do this one quickly because we've been on this topic for forever. But last thing, you're seeing a strategy here by the Bailey campaign that is what a frontrunner is supposed to do, talking about unity. Like, guys, let's not fight. Let's just all come together to beat Pritzker. That is the frontrunner strategy, so it's the right thing for them to do. I just thought it was interesting, and again, we try to teach a little bit on these podcasts. So if you're the frontrunner, this is the strategy. Hey, let's just unify, guys. Let's not fight. Because, of course, if you unify, then that means you get to win. So it's self-serving, but it also sounds really good. So you're going to see a lot of that, I'm sure, from the Bailey and Del Mar camps. It's smart play. It's a smart strategy. But I think going way back to the beginning of this conversation, when Tom and I said, we want to see it, I want to see it. It's one thing to just say, hey, guys, you should unify by supporting me. I want to see Darren and Aaron unify by supporting people who might not be part of their crew. What I mean by that is they just did a statewide tour in Illinois, and they had several stops where people were promoted who are not the Republican candidate who's sort of the institutional choice. They went into the 76th district and supported a candidate against the previous Republican nominee, and we want to beat Murray Briel in 76. So encouraging these primaries and encouraging your pure candidate versus maybe the Republican choice by locals in the state, like, you're not showing you're for unity. And this is what we are concerned about. You say you want unity, but you just took on Mike Bost and tried to knock off Mike Bost. Like, if you really want unity, then we want to see it out of you too. Don't go around the state backing your candidates in these primaries in order to further sort of your political power. If you want us to unify behind you, then we want to see it out of you too. Don't be a hypocrite. So I think if they're going to push that unity narrative, then I want to see it too. And so far, it's been, hey, unify, but unify under my tent, which isn't. That's why we always struggle in Illinois. We're always like, unify, but only behind me. Don't unify behind somebody else. That's not actual unity. Unity means working with people who maybe you disagree with a little bit, but we're all on the same team, so it's okay. That's real unity.
I think that's a very good point. And, there was a lot of, maybe not Darren this time, but a lot of his allies were encouraging people to primary incumbents in this, 2026 primary. A lot of those people are circulating in these districts. And if we want unity, if we want to be focused on what really matters, and that's beating the Democrats and defeating J.B. Pritzker and flipping state rep seats, maybe we shouldn't be encouraging primaries across the state.
I mean, listen, you don't hear me screaming that because I think we're in primary season. This is the time where we're supposed to have those fights. So but I'm not the one out there screaming unify behind me like they are. So I think primaries are a good thing. I have no problem personally with primaries, but if you're out there saying we need to unify, then you got to practice what you preach.
Yeah.
All right, I have dragged this on for forever. Let's let our guests and our panel actually talk about something different. So let's talk about the U.S. Senate race. There's some huge developments here in the U.S. Senate race. Basically, they're mostly behind Juliana Stratton. It looks like J.B. Pritzker is finally coming to bear. I don't know if it's part of the plan, or I don't know if it's just because Stratton's campaign has been fairly abysmal so far, but they've filed a PAC. They've got J.B. Pritzker's sort of right-hand political guy running that PAC, and Quentin Fulks. They've got his mouthpiece is not the right word, and I don't mean it in a negative way. Jordan Abadiah, she's she's always been sort of Pritzker's person on the comms side. She's running that. So clearly Pritzker's bringing in his big guns behind Stratton here. She's coming out with her policy agenda, focused on, it's amplifying Pritzker's victories and piggybacking on Pritzker's victories. And you saw her come out and say that, maybe it is time for a change and Chuck Schumer should go. You're seeing the Stratton campaign actually show some life, and along the way, move that field further left, which is what we as Republicans want to see. But you're seeing some interesting developments on the Stratton side. Obviously, Raja released a poll showing that he's been gaining in his lead. Of course he has. He's been spending lots of money. Kelly has released her people over profits agenda. Nobody really noticed because she's not really in the running at this point in the race. So interesting developments in the U.S. Senate race on the Democrat side. What do you guys got?
Well, I just think that people get in this mindset when they're like lieutenant governor that this is supposed to be, like an exciting experience. Like the whole point of lieutenant governor is a humbling experience. Like you're kind of irrelevant. Nobody knows who you are. Like Stratton rolls into this thinking like, oh, I'm the lieutenant governor statewide. People know me. And it's like, no, nobody's even ever heard of you. Like, you're just totally like a non-factor, right? Especially compared to somebody like Raja, who's been, who flipped a congressional seat. He's been on the ballot time and time and time again in a very populated area and spent an insane amount of money, right? So I think that, these lieutenant governors think that they're like, God's gift to the party or something. And it's like, well, you're not really that important. And also like Quentin Fulks, really, I mean, all right, what, I guess you got a loan or somebody, but he was in charge of the progressive tax. Remember? Look at how that went. And then he got loaned to the Kamala Harris campaign and was speaking on the news and saying ignorant things there. And Quentin's not the guy. Like, sorry.
In my opinion, he is, because I, would look forward to going up against him in the general election. But
I'm saying it's like if you're Pritzker and you're loaning Quentin Fulks out to somebody, I guess that's like the kiss of death, right? Progressive tax,
Pritzker really likes Fulks. So to the point, he thinks he's helping the campaign. You may disagree, but they think that's their big gun.
We're also talking about the Democratic primary here. Michael, you might think Quentin Fulks is a disaster because he lost a progressive tax that had no field because of COVID, and that's why it lost. Don't shut up, Collin. Don't answer that. Me saying that. But you might think that he's not the guy. But listen, up until this point, the word on the street has been that Stratton's got the B team from Pritzker. She's getting the low end staffers, the mid people. Nobody really knows what's going on. The committeemen are pulling their hair out if they have any hair, and a lot of people were moving towards Raj because the Stratton campaign up until this point has basically been non-existent. Now that Pritzker is putting his finger on the scale for real this time, guys, we swear, and he's lending her some of his top people, you can expect this to be some type of turning point in the race. That you're actually going to start seeing money go towards the Stratton campaign. You're actually going to see her maybe get some TV ads, be it from the PAC, be it from the campaign itself, what have you. Those are the types of things that Stratton should be doing from here on out. Raj has had a monopoly on the campaign up until this point. And honestly, I think Robin Kelly's been more of a presence, not necessarily not in the polling, but she's been more of a presence on the campaign trail than Juliana Stratton has been up until this point, okay? So if you're Stratton, you got to start going now. Go, 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 because there is no reason why you should lose this race. If you are Juliana Stratton, you losing this race would be an upset. Now, the talking heads would say, well, everybody knows Raja. He's on TV every year because he's got $1 bajillion. Everybody likes the guy. No, you're Juliana Stratton. You should win this race. Yep. You are a black woman who is lieutenant governor of the state, who has the governor's endorsement and monetary and staffing support. If you lose this race, is an indictment of your political ability and also the governor's political ability. So you cannot afford, for the sake of your own future in politics, to lose this primary. If Juliana Stratton loses this primary, she will be relegated to running for state rep again, or she'll be relegated.
She'll be as popular as Ken Duncan.
Ken Duncan popular level.
I know, but I wanted to close up your point with a funny remark. Let's let Tom and Sharon go.
Yes. He will. Her political career will be over. This is your final stand, Juliana. You cannot take anything for granted. Go take out Raja, and everybody here on the Republican side will be so happy you did it.
Believe me, I will. Because he's my U.S. rep, and he's useless. He's very
other than using our tax dollars to send us mailings every 5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I one time had an actual meeting with him, and what I noticed was there were people coming in and out of his office less than every 10 minutes. And I thought, what the heck? That's kind of strange, because that doesn't happen where I work. We're in there for an hour, So, and as I watched, and it didn't matter whether, I saw a whole group of Indian, people from an organization in and out within 10 minutes. And as I was in there having a discussion with him, with mine, was that he has a staff member come in and say, oh, you've got another meeting in 5 minutes. So you can shorten up that meeting, which, okay, I'm not stupid. I know what was going on, but that turned me off from him from second
Well,
one.
the thing, Sharon,
He
the thing people
doesn't
don't
take
realize,
that time.
if you haven't dealt with Raja like we have, having lived in his district and dealt with him,
Yeah.
they've done a good job manufacturing a personality in those TV ads. But the
Yeah.
reality is, when you see it, you can tell it's pretty forced. Like there was just a video this week where he was with, I think it was not the Peoria mayor. He was with the mayor and a local representative, Sharon Chung, I think it was, the normal mayor. And they were like walking back behind the scenes of like a restaurant, and someone was like, Raja, and he's like, oh, hi. And they're like, they said their name, and he was like, just call me Raja. Because that's his line from his TV ads. Like, they just called you Raja when they said hello, but you couldn't even have a human interaction. You were just like, just call me Raja. And then it was like awkward silence after that. Like it's manufactured. But when you have millions of dollars, you can fake it. But the reality is, he is not the moderate he claims to be. He's not that likable personality you see on the TV ads. You just, but if voters never see that, it's not going to matter.
Right. And as far as Juliana, I mean, I hope she takes him out, but I look at both sides. I hate to go into the male female thing, but quite frankly, I've had enough of the women being senators in this state, and the ones that have been there have not been impressive. And neither is Juliana.
Proud feminist Sharon
It's
Johnson.
embarrassing. It's embarrassing as a woman to have people that are not qualified to be there. That's the nicest thing I can say.
Isn't the list just Tammy Duckworth and Carol Moseley Braun?
I don't know. Tom, what were your thoughts?
Carol Moseley Braun was better than Duckworth.
So look, Chris, I think
that's a bold take.
You made the comment that if Juliana loses this is a huge upset. I don't agree with that. I think on paper, maybe you could make the argument it should be an upset, that she should have an advantage coming into this thing. But everybody knew when she announced, when the seat was open, that she was not in the she was not the leading candidate at any time in this race. She has never been seen as the front runner at any time in this race. Raja has always had an advantage over her, both in name ID, in people who will commit to voting for him. He's been doing the kind of things over the last 5-10 years that really people should have been doing to get themselves ready to run for United States Senate. Juliana's career in politics has been relatively short. And during that time, she's been primarily focused on being part of the Pritzker team, not on establishing a brand as Juliana Stratton, an independent political force of her own. And part of that's just, by necessity, right? You're running as lieutenant governor. To Michael's point, you're not running for yourself. You're not the one person at the top of the ballot who people are focusing on and voting for. But I think that every poll has shown Raja has a lead here. She, as sitting lieutenant governor with two pretty notable statewide victories under her belt, still is never polling above 20% in a Democratic primary. I mean, that's a real bucket of cold water on the stature and strength that a sitting lieutenant governor brings into a situation. I also question a little bit about if the Pritzker team had been serious about this. This is not magic. The one major advantage that the Pritzker campaign brings to any endorsement that they're going to get involved in, any race they're going to get involved in, is unlimited cash. It's not like they can try a bunch of different things and then if they have to come back to cash. If they were serious about this, they wouldn't be waiting around to assign staff until October or late September, of the year. They wouldn't wait till they were behind in several polls in a row. They would have on day one put the A team on this and written a 8-figure check to a super PAC that was supporting her. So, that's the difference maker that the Pritzker endorsement and campaign could have been back at the point of announcement. I think they've waited too long to get involved in this race. Raja still has the ability to stay up on TV aggressively like he has been. People are already starting to make some decisions about things. I mean, putting Raja in the high 30s in a three-way race is a very good position for him to be in right now. Now, of course, you can come in with money and some negatives and try to, chip that number down a little bit, get people to decommit. But the reality is the strength of what should have been the strength on paper that could have supported Chris's idea that this would have been an upset would have been that full court press, that major inflection of cash at a critical point in the race. The idea now, though, is she has to dig herself out from being an also ran, put herself in the front runner capacity, and then try to hold that on through primary election day.
Yeah, yeah.
I would.
Chris, well, let's put a pin in this. I think at some point we're gonna have to have Batnick and Demmer, and then me and Chris, and just go back and forth on this, because I think we've got you, Tom, and Mark have a similar perspective on this, and me and Chris have a different perspective. But for time, I got to get us moving to the next topic. So, Chris, you can save it for when we have the showdown of the U.S. Senate race. This one will be real quick on, but there's a candidate running for the 13th congressional district. I found out about it through Facebook. Very few people have heard about it, but Jeff Wilson's running the 13th against Nikki Budzinski. That gives us two Republican candidates there. Joshua Lloyd previously said that he'd be running. It'd be interesting to see how this race plays out. Budzinski's going to be real tough to beat. But we want to have a great candidate in that race. And I know Lloyd struggled a little bit, so I think at minimum these two can push each other, and we'll see who comes out of the primary. But Wilson has an impressive resume, a veteran of the U.S. Navy. He's been in local office, was on a U.S. nuclear-powered submarine. He's probably got some great stories about that. Has a master's in nuclear engineering from U of I. 8 kids, 11 grandkids, is on the Champaign County Board. There's some potential there. So I only bring it up because apparently he announced like a month or two ago, and nobody knew about it. Nobody heard about it. So I'm finally bringing it up here in the podcast just so we can inform our audience that, yes, there is a candidate in IL 13. All right, let's go to the next one here. We're going to go into some topics here, some issue topics. I don't know if we'll get through our whole agenda. Let's just see which ones of these get our audience, our panel, the most excited. First is, I'm glad that we're all still here because the government is shut down. And then from what I've been told, number one, it's all the Republicans' fault. And number two, the whole world stops when, Republicans force the government to be shut down, even though we've all lived through this way too many times at this point. And also it was Democrats who wanted this shutdown. They even told us they're the ones who wanted this shutdown. This is the Democrat-led shutdown of the federal government, and we're now living in it. So what are your guys' thoughts? They had a number of demands that, from what I read, would cost taxpayers more than $1 trillion because they only cared about the deficit a few months ago during the Big Beautiful Bill. Now suddenly they don't care about the debt and deficit anymore. Now they've got $1 trillion of demands before they'll let the government be reopened. It's funny how, we sort of care about something when it's convenient and then stop caring about it when it's no longer convenient, but whatever. What do you guys got on the government shutdown?
I just think the messaging from the Democrats has kind of been strange on this. Like, they want it, but then they're blaming us for it, even though they're the ones that wanted it. And then they've been asked by reporters, kind of, why are we doing this? And you can't really get a straight answer. I guess part of it is, Obamacare type subsidies that were increased during COVID, but are set to expire. And it's like, well, if these were put in place because COVID was going on, and that's understandable, then why do we need to continue these into perpetuity? I guess that's like why they have that phrase, the hardest thing to kill is a government program, right? Because once that gets started, you're never going to reel it back in without people's hair getting lit on fire.
And that's based on how the media has been presenting this. They've been saying that it's, Republicans are going to be making cuts to healthcare unless Democrats get their way. It's like, hold on a second. These are set to sunset. They were supposed to be temporary, but yet, of course, the media is spinning this as Republicans are cutting healthcare. Like, if that's true, then what you should have been saying is that Democrats were going to raise your taxes when Trump's tax cuts were going to expire. If you're going to be intellectually honest and say that if your position is that Republicans are about to cut healthcare, then you should have been saying then that Democrats are about to raise your taxes. But again, we pick what narrative fits the moment and just hope everybody forgot what we said yesterday.
I think it's interesting too to look at, Dick Durbin took a lot of heat in the spring when he voted for the CR. Especially here in Illinois, there were people who were very quick to denounce him, and he's quickly backtracked from, taking that kind of position. I think his comment at the time was something like he didn't like the CR, but he liked shutting down the government less. I guess he's sort of flipped those priorities now, and he likes shutting the government down more than doing another CR. But these are all kind of evolving things, and people are testing out which is the path of least resistance. Am I going to take more heat for the voting for the CR? Am I going to take more heat for shutting down the government? I think this is a little bit of a people putting their toe in the water and sort of figuring out which side they want to be on. But it is, I think, tough after Senate Democrats had voted just a few months ago for a CR for them to now say, no, no, never mind, shutdown's not that bad.
No. Yeah. Well, I do like, it's funny how it was, when it was a Republican-led shutdown, it's the end of the world. And look at all the people who are going to be furloughed or laid off and aren't going to get their paychecks. And this is going to hurt our veterans and our police officers. And, now suddenly now hold on, Sharon. Now suddenly when Democrats are pushing for it, they're like, it's okay, guys. It's okay. These won't happen. These won't be problems.
First of all, every one of those federal employees are still going to get paid. They're on a paid holiday basically right now, which there are some people there still working. Your TSA, your Capitol Police, your FBI, your Secret Service, and all of your military. Nobody's on furlough there. And the fact is anybody who's still working, those poor souls are the ones working while everyone else is sitting at home. So shutting down the government is actually a waste of money as far as I'm concerned. Keep it going because you're going to pay them anyway. You're not saving anybody any money. In fact, you're wasting our tax dollars, and figure it out. Get your crap together and figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead,
Chris, close this out.
As a tax and spend Republican, I like keeping the government open. I like having more government spending because I think the Republican ideas of fiscal conservatives are nonsense. Whether or not I'm speaking facetiously is up for the audience to decide. In any case, this government shutdown has made me reconsider my position on a number of issues because I didn't even know the government shutdown was going to happen. I don't know if I was living under a rock. Then the government shutdown happened and nothing changed. Maybe the biggest problem is I'm not a federal employee, so I didn't notice anything. And I was like, oh, the federal government shut down. Oh, well, maybe government really doesn't matter. Maybe Ron Paul was right all along that we never needed government to begin with because I haven't noticed the difference. And maybe, just maybe, we would do a lot better if the government didn't force itself to shut down every year or so because the idiots in Congress can't get along. And now, again, was I speaking facetiously? That's for you, the audience, to decide.
Well, let's make Chris's head explode and talk labor. As somebody who has supported labor publicly and gotten heat for it, I could never be called an anti-labor, anti-union person, let alone Republican. But I got to tell you what the AFL-CIO has done over the last week has really frustrated me because as somebody who has tried to bridge that gap between my party and labor, this has been a bit disheartening and frankly quite frustrating. It started with this, just a small story, nothing big. This was a week-ish ago. The AFL-CIO came out against the Fair Maps Amendment that is being pushed unanimously. Their board voted unanimously to oppose it. They said this. They basically just came out and said this would help Republicans too much, so we're just not going to support it. Which really frustrated me because it's like, okay, are you just going to be that overtly partisan? It's hard for me to defend you to my party when you do crap like that. So I didn't know if I'd make it a topic when that happened. But then, I don't know, a day or two ago, then it for sure became a topic because they came out and said that they're going to pull out from the agreed bill process, which we don't have time to really get into this in detail on the podcast. But here's the summary. One of the only things that works in Springfield is the agreed bill process. It forces Republicans and Democrats, labor and business to sit around the table and nothing moves until all of them agree. This has been used for workers' comp, for insurance, unemployment insurance, and a number of other topics. And there's a number of quotes in the different articles about this that have been posted where lobbyists and elected officials off the record have said, like, guys, this is the only thing we really do down here that actually works, and you're going to ruin it. You're going to pull out from it. And they said flat out, the whole reason why they're doing it is because they don't like to see that Republicans are making gains in other areas of the country. So they want to maximize their gains here in Illinois. That's the whole reason why they're doing it. They basically said that. And of course, their allies and people like Cat Fax have come out and said, nothing will change. It's okay. Nothing will change. They'll still work together. It's like, no. They literally said the whole reason they're doing this is they want to push forward their initiatives and they don't want to have to work with labor or Republicans anymore. In fact, in their announcement of this, they copied everybody they needed to copy on the Democrat side, didn't copy Curran, didn't copy McCombie. They've made it completely clear what they're trying to accomplish here. Someone had a great quote on this. a lobbyist, I don't remember where this was from, forgive me, but a lobbyist said they're blowing up 40 years of progress because of Donald Trump. This is the only thing in Springfield that actually works. Now we're about to see a partisan tsunami of labor legislation, which is true. That's where this is going to go. So, Tom, I want to start with you before we open it up to everybody else. What are your thoughts on this? Am I overblowing it, or am I maybe kind of in the ballpark here?
No, I think you're in the ballpark. This is, I think, really concerning. Both unemployment insurance and work comp have always been about striking a balance between making sure that there's sufficient protections and benefits in place for employers, employees together in that picture. Who's paying for it? Who's receiving it? How do you index this? What's Illinois look like compared to other states across the country? Where are we competing for jobs? Where are we, losing opportunities? All of those things were always about striking a balance. It wasn't about trying to find who at this one moment in time has enough political clout to be able to push through something that's good for their side and not for anybody else. So that agreed bill process was really about trying to get a broad consensus about what is doable and practical to implement here in the state of Illinois. The idea that that process is going to be set aside, now it's just about, hey, you know what? You count to 60 and 30 and 1, you get yours. I count to 60 and 31, I get mine, and it's us against each other. It's way too adversarial, and it's affecting these programs that are very complicated. It's very difficult to communicate how these things affect employment today, how it affects costs for employers today, how it affects benefits for employees today. But if we put ourselves on the wrong trajectory there, we're going to spin wildly out of line with every other state in the country. And work comp and unemployment insurance are going to be major drags on Illinois' ability to add workers to the state that, when we add workers to the state of Illinois, in the vast majority of cases, benefit both business and labor. We're going to lose that competitive advantage that could have made all the rising tide that could have lifted all boats.
Yeah, one of the in one of the articles that was written, and again, I have so many notes here. I don't remember who put this out, so if it was you, I would give you credit if I remember. I'm sorry, but there was a quote from one of the business group leaders that said, "On workers' comp, we went from third highest in the country to 23rd highest in the country. Now they're worried they're going to get steamrolled." I mean, that was the point here, was to find that balance that Tom just talked about, because you do have, in some ways, competing interests. We want to take care of our workers. One of Illinois' greatest strengths, and frankly, one of our only remaining strengths, since we're jacking up our energy sector, one of our greatest strengths is our workforce. It's our hard workers in this state. So we want to support them and take care of them. But if you're the third highest workers' comp costs in the nation, that's keeping businesses out, which means fewer jobs for those workers. The balance is important. And it looks like we're going to completely throw out that balance. And I think business leaders, and frankly, just all of us, should be rightly worried about where this goes in the coming years.
They're going to have that issue coming in veto session with the whole transportation thing.
Yep.
Same thing that, they want to mix everything together. They want to put them all together. And then there's going to be all the programs are going to go to one little group over here. And then everybody else is going to be left with nothing. And we're going to lose a lot of jobs out in the suburbs. And they're not working to work together. All they want to do with the transportation department is have one group in control. Everybody else, forget it. There's going to be no coordination whatsoever.
And my question is, where does this go with the business community? This will make Calkins very happy when I say what I'm about to say, but, for a long time, the business community in the state, at least most of them, have tried really hard not to pick fights with Pritzker and the Democrats because they're in control. So I get it. But they continue to get steamrolled, using their word here, over and over. It's about to happen again. And so the question is, at what point do they finally say, you know what? We've been taking it up the rear end for years in Illinois, and smiled and be like, oh, please do it again. Maybe now it's time to say there's a different path. Maybe now it's time to push back a bit and say, you know what? We could do better in this state because we are, look at every metric, 48th, 49th, 50th, and almost every single economic metric. And yet typically the business community is like, yay, Pritzker, yay, good job. Maybe this is the wake up call to say, you know what? It's time to fight back a little bit. You don't have to make him an enemy. But you know what? I think in other states, what we see when Democrats are controlled, the business community is friendly with the ruling Democrats, but also pushing their interests and saying, listen, it has to change. You can find a balance. You don't have to call all out war. But you know what? It is time to start to play the game. Get involved in some of these campaigns where you've got somebody who would be pro-business, maybe help them get elected over that incumbent who's completely anti-business. You got to start to play the game if you want to see changes.
Look,
Well,
I
I
think
think
one of the
they-
important things here is that just real quick, the agreed bill process was something that was enforced by the governor and the two legislative leaders, the Senate president and the Speaker of the House. This is not an area where that process was not in rule anywhere. It's not a formal thing. It was an agreement in process. I think this is going to embolden business groups to get involved in Democratic primaries that might not be on the same side as the legislative leader should be. It might have a preference on. They're going to need to go member by member to advocate for their interests because they're going to need allies who can block these things from getting sufficient number of votes. Mm-hmm. So it's actually a way that could shift some of the political authority away from the leader who says, stick with me on these candidates and I'll stick with you on something like the agreed bill process. And it's going to go for every man for themselves. And they're going to have to go member by member and try to get allies there. And sometimes that's going to mean taking a side against the legislative leaders.
Yeah, Tom makes a spectacular point there because I agree with Collin. I think this is a bad decision on the AFL-CIO's part. I think this is bad for the state. But I think the reasoning partially why this is happening is because you don't have strong leadership out of the caucuses and out of the governor's office. Because when you have legislative leaders who are committed to governing, they can wrangle the interest groups in a room and say, you two are going to get along and we're going to figure it out what we're going to do on this bill, okay? When you had strong-arm politicians or just government people in general running the state, sure, maybe the state wasn't ideal. There was problems with the state. But you had people like that who were going to say, business, labor, in a room, let's hash this out, let's get this bill through, okay? You don't have that. What you have is a Democratic caucus that is too big for its own good. And if you ask any Democrat in the state of Illinois if that's true, they will tell you off the record that is 100% true, that there are too many Democrats in Springfield. You can't control them. And when the AFL-CIO, they're deciding right now, you know what? The government's weak, the legislators weak right now. We can't trust them to do what's in our best interest. We're going to go off. We're going to hold everybody hostage now. Hey, if we don't like it, it ain't getting passed. If we don't like it, it ain't getting passed. So screw what the business community says. We don't want to work with them anymore. So it allows these things to happen. Okay? So yes, I think this is a bad decision for the AFL-CIO. But you cannot necessarily say that this is all they're doing because there is an environment here that has allowed this to happen.
You know, there's real quick. There's one of the things I hear often is from people is, you missed Madigan yet?
Yeah, you just made Chris very happy. All right, let me keep us moving here. We've got energy, we've got transit. I don't know if we've got time to get to both of them. Let's ask our guests, Sharon, Tom, either of those topics, ones that when you came on, you're like, ooh, I'm so excited to talk about these topics. You got one you want to pick?
No, I just quickly about transit. I could just.
Well, don't just tell me which one. Transit.
Tom,
do you have a passion about either?
I'm good for transit.
All right, let's go to transit, and if we have time, we'll go to energy. But I just looking at our topics here in our time, I want to make sure we don't keep you guys for 6 hours. So let's go to transit. And Sharon, I'll let you go first, but let me kick it off. So obviously, this is going to be a big topic in veto session, which is coming up in a week and a half at this point. If you're watching this on Friday, if you're watching it next week, it's just a week away. And one of the big things that will be happening during veto session is the transit. I don't know what they're calling it, the fiscal cliff, but it's a bailout. And let's be real here. This is why I wanted to talk about it. It's a bailout of the CTA. All right, you've got somebody in who I really respect in Brad Stevens, Rosemont mayor and state rep, who I think is one of the good ones, who kind of said the quiet part out loud a couple months ago, where he said, this can't become a city versus suburbs thing, which you could tell. They've been very, very, very carefully orchestrating this for the last year to try to keep it from being a city versus suburbs thing, because the reality is that Pace is pretty well run. They've got a little bit of a fiscal cliff, a little bit of problems fiscally they need to overcome. But overall, when you look at their fiscal numbers and you look at the latest rider satisfaction numbers, Pace does pretty well. Metro does pretty well. They're a little bit more in trouble when it comes to finances, but not that much more than Pace is. Metro and Pace are decently well run. RTA, decently well run. The problem has always been CTA. They are massively in debt. They are absolutely horribly run. They are the problem here. The problem for all the rest of us is, why are all of us paying for that mismanagement? Why are we all being asked to bail out the CTA? They've packaged it as a whole transit system and it's all one and it all needs to work. And I get that. But the reality is, Metro and Pace are what we deal with out here in the suburbs. You're asking us to pay higher taxes because you keep screwing up the CTA. That's a hard pill to swallow for anybody who doesn't actually live in Chicago or regularly use the CTA. That's what this is. And so while I'm not necessarily trying to spur a city versus the rest of the state fight, that is actually what this is, and we should at least be honest about that fact. Sharon, go ahead.
Well, it's just talking to a bunch of the people, up in the Lake and McHenry County, those, mayors, the township people, they're very concerned, obviously, because they're afraid that their people aren't going to be able to get anywhere because everything's going to be taken away. As township supervisor, Pace, they give us, they give the township all kind, the buses, they give, money for transportation. There's special programs to get people down to, the veteran centers and things like that. And then their Pace representatives are concerned that everything is going to be removed from the suburbs. I mean, their own people, their own Pace people are concerned. So when you have that many
Sharon, can I add to that? Because we talked about this a few weeks ago, and I need people to remember this because I didn't see enough Republicans come out with this. So I need to point it out a second time, which is, it wasn't noticed by a lot of people other than us nerds, but you saw the RTA take $74 million out of Metro and Pace to give CTA basically a bridge loan or a bridge to make sure they don't hit their cliff too early. As a result, what ended up happening? Sharon just brought it up. These paratransit programs have had to be cut significantly. You see the programs are cut. Now the fares are increased because they had to take money out of Pace, they had to take money out of Metro to keep CTA afloat. If you don't think this is a situation where the suburbs are getting screwed to help CTA, it's already happening right now. They haven't even passed their reform yet, and it's already happening. Sharon, thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
No, and then the majority of the people on that new quote unquote board, they're going to make it, we might put one or two people from the suburbs and the rest are all going to be appointed from the governor. Well, we know what happens when everybody's appointed from the governor. We know and even the Republican side only gets like one person if they get one. And then the Democrat side, they get three to our, half a person. So, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but the fact is if people don't, not even just our legislators, I've always said Republicans have the worst PR in the world. They just don't know how to get their, they have everything at the right heart, but they just never get it out there. They don't fight for what's right. They don't speak out. They don't get mad. You don't even got to be mad. You just have to speak, and we don't do that on our side.
And we focused a lot on the fiscal side of this and on the tax increases we're probably going to face. But honestly, personally, I'm more honked off. No one seems to care about it, so I've left it alone. But I'm more honked off at how much control and power is being ripped out of the collar counties and the suburbs and given to Pritzker and the Cook County Board President and the Chicago mayor. Like, that's, to me, the biggest long-term problem. But you know what? When it comes to messaging, you got to focus on the thing that's going to move votes the most, and the taxes are going to move votes the most. So I've left that part alone. But Sharon, you're right. That is the biggest long-term problem here.
Yeah,
Tom, go ahead and give your thought.
We need to get our people out. We need to get the people who live here to start getting out there. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so I think on issues like this, there's a real tendency by the legislature to wait until they absolutely must make a decision and have no other alternatives on the table. That's one of the interesting things to watch in this, which is, which side is painting the cliff as the most dire, or which side is saying we have other options that are on the table. That usually is an indication for which side it wants to force the vote today to take the deal that's on the table versus what side is not happy with the deal that's on the table and wants to buy themselves a little bit more time. That's going to continue.
So, Tom, should we take that lesson to mean that because the Senate Democrats are saying we got to rush and the House Democrats are saying we've got time? Is that essentially what you're saying?
It is. And the Senate Democrats had a plan in place. They wanted to say, look, we've got it taken care of. Now you take it. We've made the action. But it's the same thing with CTA, with RTA, with Metro, with Pace. Who is the one who's crying, shouting fire the loudest, right? Who's the one that's trying to say, we need to make this decision right now? It's the person who's most satisfied with the proposal that's on the table at that moment.
That's really good
The
advice.
others who are really not satisfied with what they're going to have today, we're seeing this even today. There's now some pretty significant revisions in RTA's forecast for when that cliff is going to hit, how large that cliff is, what monies can be substituted here and there, how we can push the can down, kick the can down the road. There's a lot of maneuvering right now by people who either want to force a question or don't. The other piece is, there's also some structuring that happens with legislature and when the vote happens, when the effective date is. Do you need a supermajority or a simple majority? Can these things happen in phases? Can I vote for something where the first half of the fiscal year, there's no change, but then there's a delayed implementation till after the election? Everybody's playing a lot of different angles on this thing. And I think, the piece of it, which is who's going to be willing to take politically controversial votes and when, is really what's guiding the ultimate solution in this case. Because to the point about balance between things, there's a power center today, and the power center is not balanced. They're going to get the outcome that they want. The people who are voting from in most cases, legislators from the city of Chicago are going to get the outcome that they want. There are other maneuvers at place, though, to try to either push that off, buy some time, reshuffle the deck, whatever the case is.
If you're watching this podcast, go back a couple minutes and rewatch everything Tom just said, because there's like 7 different lessons of how Springfield works that you need to remember. So, Tom, I couldn't give you more kudos. Well said. Anything else on transit before I move us to the next topic here? Here's one quick thing that I noticed. It looks like in this new proposal, I read that whole original bill. I read it from start to finish because there were so many things that they snuck in that no one was talking about. And it looks like in this new proposal I saw in a WMBD article or piece that downstate transit agencies are going to get a little sweetener that hopefully maybe will get some of their legislators to support it. And no one's talking about this, that right now when downstate has transit projects, they've got to match 35% of that cost. Whereas in the new proposal, they'll only have to match 20%, which again, you got to look for where those sweeteners they're sneaking in to try to get the votes where they need. That has a long-term impact. If for all of our transit programs moving forward, now state taxpayers are going to have to pay 80% instead of 65%, also they could pass this CTA bailout. You are borrowing in the future to get through your current fiscal emergency. Those are the kind of things we got to be keeping an eye on. All right, let's go to our next topic. I can't skip this one because Sharon's here. Maybe the rest of us will just let her cover it. But we got to talk crime, and we got to specifically talk about the Peacekeepers. We talked about it recently where you had a Peacekeeper stand on stage with J.B. Pritzker and be the model for how we fix crime in Illinois, and then go participate in a $700K cash and grab that kills a father-to-be in a horrible, horrible situation. We now have our second story just in the last 2 weeks of a peacekeeper who is now in trouble because there was a peacekeeper who, in the midst of a brouhaha, decided someone was being, I'm trying to give the summary here because we're short on time, but someone was being arrested. They decided to jump in the middle of it and then start throwing punches at cops. This is a peacekeeper who got in the middle of it and started throwing punches at police officers. This is who we are paying with tax dollars in order to try to get them to not commit crimes. And they're going in and throwing punches at police officers. Probably not a program that's working super great right now. Sharon, I know you're going to have strong thoughts.
Yeah, we found out that there's a similar program like that in Lake County, and it's all felons. I mean, every one of them is a felon. And while, hey, I'm the first person to support people that are, serve their time, they changed their life, they're doing great things. But, I'm still concerned about giving that kind of power and that kind of, community, what's the word, activity, they're the ones, they're not the mentors. They're not people that would put for mentoring anything. And they're not peacekeepers. They're the ones causing all the problems. Anybody who, you've got an idiot for a mayor in Chicago, number one. The fact is his entire police department does not trust him. And they don't like him, but they don't trust him. You can not like somebody, but when you don't trust your own boss to say, to support you and do the right things, and I can tell you, it's not going to happen. You can't trust Pritzker with that stuff either. It's always anti-police. Everything is anti-police in this state.
Yeah.
So,
well, and this is not the first time. We're just now finally starting to put a spotlight on this program, but now we're looking back at previous situations, going, maybe there's a trend here. Because last month there was a video of men who claimed to be violence interrupters, who were interfering with Chicago cops who were arresting somebody, and then in March, a woman was shot during a team takeover, and then one of the violence interrupters came and took a bunch of those teens in their car and sped them off like a getaway vehicle. And then just this year, there was a peacekeeper who got a 9-year prison sentence for taking part in a mob beating a motorist in the little village. I mean, we're seeing now a trend here. And Sharon brought up something important, which is this anti-police rhetoric and this pro-criminal agenda from Kim Foxx, J.B. Pritzker, Brandon Johnson, all the way down. It's creating a situation that is dangerous for our safety and dangerous for officers. You saw it in Peoria just this last weekend, where there was a gunshot victim at like 4 in the morning. What is this? I'm reading it now. 4:45 in the morning. And first responders were dispatched because the person was still alive. They had gotten shot. They got there in 2 minutes, but then a whole mob got in their way and caused problems. It was pushing against them and fighting against them, keeping them away. They couldn't get to that individual who was shot for 6 minutes because they're trying to get through the mob. Like, it's this idea that they're the enemy. They're trying to save that dude's life who you shot. They're trying to save him, but you've made them the enemy. This is the problem with the far left agenda, especially in Illinois, especially in Cook County, especially in Chicago. But this is a story in Peoria. Sharon brought up Lake County. It's not just Chicago. When you continue to support criminals and not support the actual victims of crime, this is where it leads to.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll have to find that quote. I was going to save it for my ending thing, but there was what was it? I have to find the quote here.
You can save it for the ending. That's all right.
Okay, there was a quote by the mayor that just said it all. Said completely. It just.
Well, I mean, you got elected officials comparing ICE to Gestapo and saying our police officers are a sickness. I think that might be the one you're pointing to. Yeah.
Oh, here it is. A sickness that it is. Law enforcement is a sickness that needs to be eradicated. That is a quote from the Chicago mayor. And that was
it ends at sickness. Somebody added the eradicated part, but you are still making a good point.
So he then 2 days before that, he said police officers in Chicago will have to defend the people that were attacking the ICE officers. Okay. So you want them to break the law. You want them to help somebody who's breaking the law, but yet they're a sickness that needs to be eradicated. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Everybody good? We're low on time, but if anyone really wants to jump in here, I want to give you a chance. Otherwise, let's get to our news you can use so we can move along here. So this is our quick hit section. I'm going to give some details that our audience should be aware of, but you probably aren't because most of these stories get buried by the media, and so you probably don't know most of these. I know some of my friends in the media who watch, who hate it when I dig on you. You're not going to like one of these topics, but it's true because just our very first one here, there was a report out about the state of Illinois education, and of course the Chicago Tribune. I don't know what the heck happened to the Chicago Tribune, but of course they highlighted all the positive aspects of that report. I opened it up for myself and I was like, okay, it's actually not that positive. If you look at the actual report that came out, they cherry picked, look, we're improving in some areas in education. And it's true. And I do want us to improve in all areas, but they completely skipped some of the most important parts. 4th grade reading in Illinois. We were 35% proficient in 2015, down to 34 in 2019, down to 30 in 2024. 8th grade math, 32, 34, 32, stagnant. College and career readiness, 38, 30 now in 2024. And here's a sick one. Most people don't know about the 5 essentials, but it's a way that we rate our schools on 5 areas that have been identified to really improve education in those districts. They test 5 things, and every single one we have seen since 2018, all the metrics have gone down. Effective leaders has gone down 4 points from 28% to 23%. Collaborative teachers has gone down from 34 to 19. Involved families has gone down from 38 to 31. Supportive environment down from 35 to 31. Ambitious instruction down from 64 to 36. Sheesh. Ooh, that's awful. We are seeing significant problems in education in Illinois. And yes, there are some decent metrics. One side cherry picks the bad ones, and one side cherry picks the good ones. And I'm sitting here saying, could we at least have a real conversation about education in this state? Because we are not succeeding in the way that we educate students, especially in the areas that we need to be investing the most of our effort. You look at Chicago, where chronic absenteeism is over 40%. Yet we're still graduating them. Our graduation rates have never been higher. It's like, wait, so our education's worse, but we're still sending them out into the workforce? Like, there's a problem here, and we need to do something about it.
You know, the problem, Collin, is number one, they're told that they cannot hold people back anymore. They have to graduate them. So of course they have a high graduation rate. If you show, if you got half your classes done, you automatically are going to graduate. There is no holding anybody back.
Yep. And the reality is, a third of our students are meeting national benchmarks.
Correct.
Do you hear everyone's like, oh, Illinois' benchmarks are too high? We're talking national benchmarks. Only a third are hitting those marks. That's not acceptable. I don't care. Give me all your spin you want, JB Pritzker. If you're okay that 2/3 of our students aren't reaching that level of proficiency, then maybe it's time to pick a different career, because some of us would like to see those numbers be a little higher.
In Northern Illinois,
we got to do this quick. This is the quick section.
Quickly, Northern Illinois had 3 new schools start within 2 years of COVID. Why? Because of the bad grades and everything else. And then we have a record number of people who are teaching their children at home now.
Let's go to the next one here. Domestic violence is surging in Chicago. While there are some metrics when it comes to crime that are getting better, I'll be one of the few Republicans to admit that. One of the ones that is absolutely not getting better, as a matter of fact, getting significantly worse, is domestic violence. Domestic homicides are up 18% over last year. Fatal domestic shootings are up 46% over the last year. Calls to the Illinois Domestic Hotline have more than doubled since the pandemic. This is not okay. And yet, what is Brandon Johnson's answer to this? He's slashing their budget for gender-based violence services in half in his next budget. You hear all the time that, Democrats care and they want to support, especially women and those who are most in need. You don't see that often, typically, out of Democrats, even though they like to claim that they do. And right here, you see an example where Johnson is slashing this budget line item in half, while we see a huge problem right now with domestic violence, especially in the city of Chicago. Not okay. Quick thoughts? Poor Sharon now is afraid to give her thoughts. I love you, Sharon.
Just, it's, I mean.
You're good. I'm just teasing you. All right, this is an interesting one, and this will probably be one of those that you guys are like, why are you even bringing this up? But every once in a while, I see a stat that just makes me go, huh? And I want to share it. And that's what one of this is. Cranes had an article that was really good based on a study where researchers found that over half of firearm injury treatments are paid by Medicaid. They looked at, I think it was from 2016 to 2021 was the study timeline. And they found that the total cost of initial treatment of firearm injuries at U.S. hospitals is $7.7 billion, and over half of that is billed to Medicaid. That's just a to me, because you think about, these are individuals who are some of which are participating in maybe gang violence or crime where they're at fault and they're getting shot back and they're living a life that they shouldn't be living. And then here we are as taxpayers paying their bill. You got shot doing something you shouldn't have been doing, and we're paying the bill. I don't have a solution for it, but it was just a stat that made me go, yeah, that probably isn't the way it ought to be. Don't have a solution, but I just wanted to shine a spotlight on the stat. I thought it was interesting.
It's a good point too. Like, talking about, gun violence has a whole number of ripple effects. It affects families, it affects safety in communities, it affects businesses in those communities, and then it also affects hospitals. And many of these hospitals end up having their operating rooms, their emergency rooms, their recovery rooms filled with people who are victims of violent crime. And it really strains their ability to provide normal healthcare services for their communities. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a great observation about, when we talk about the importance of crime in an area, it's touching almost every part of somebody's life. in addition to, the personal disruption that it causes if you or a loved one's a victim of these crimes. It's also, really taxing every single resource that's available in those communities.
Yeah, 100%. All right, couple more here. You wouldn't know it if you just paid attention to the news, but believe it or not, the U.S. economy is actually growing. Again, you wouldn't know it because you've heard from Democrats and Pritzker and many of their allies that because of tariffs, which by the way, I have some frustrations with tariffs myself, but because of tariffs and Trump and Republicans and their tax cut bill and everything else, the economy's in shambles. We're in a recession. The world is over. And yet, when you look, actually, the U.S. economy grew by 3.8% in the second quarter. They've had to revise that upwards multiple times because every time they look at new data, they're like, wait, actually, it was even better than we thought. And as a result, they're seeing that the third quarter is also looking like it's going to be well over 3%. Right now, they're estimating 3.3% growth. I'm old enough to remember when in the 2000s, Barack Obama and his financial advisors were trying to convince all of us that 3% growth was just never going to happen again. And yeah, here we see it. Despite all of the horribleness of Trump and the tariffs and Republicans, our economy is actually growing pretty dang well. It's not, I will say this, let's be real, Republicans. It's not because we're doing a dang good job. It shows the resilience of the U.S. economy, but it's also not the doom and gloom that Democrats are trying to paint here about how the world is ending, everything is over, the economy's in shambles, and we're all going to be living on the streets. The reality is this economy is more resilient than that. And the Trump people are saying, let us cook. It's going to be okay. Maybe they're right. I hope they are. But you're showing some signs of positivity in this economy that nobody seems to be willing to talk about. I wonder why. Maybe it's because there's a Republican in the White House. Shocker.
I think an important thing here is, though, we've seen a lot of these data has been subject to multiple revisions, whether it's unemployment figures, GDP growth, inflation rates. The problem is a lot of outside entities are looking at those numbers, that primarily among which is the Fed, determining what to do with interest rates about, are we in an inflationary environment? Do we need to reduce interest rates to increase employment? But also a lot of private industry is looking at what do these numbers look like? How are we building this into our forecasts? I think there needs to be a real concerted effort to get these numbers right the first time, because all kinds of people around the nation and around the world are looking to these reports to figure out what to do next. That's what's always important in the economy. What's happening next, not what happened yesterday.
Yep. And honestly, when you have everyone saying everything's awful, then when they're making projections, they're going to believe it. So they're going to say, okay, I guess everything's awful. And then the data comes in and it says, no, actually, it's not that awful. That's a problem. All right, last one here. This is the one that's going to get me in trouble with some of my friends in the media, but it's hard to say that this ain't right. Gallup did a study. I'm looking at the article in the Hill right now that Gallup did a poll and they tested confidence in media. They do this regularly, and it has hit a new record low. I'm going to have Lane bring up the graph since 1972. You can see it's been dropping ever since then, and it's now at a record low of 28%. You could expect that Republicans don't really trust the news media. Only 8% trust the media, but they're not the only one. Independents, their numbers at the lowest since 2003, I think. It's at 27%, which is the historic low. Democrats are at 51%. So I was saying this to somebody earlier. If you want one sign of the bias in the media, Democrats at 51% still trust the media. That probably tells you maybe they trust it because they like what they hear. Maybe that's why many of us have said, yeah, guys, you're a bit slanted. Even this kind of backs that up. But the larger point is the more the media continues to push their own narrative, which tends to align with one political party, people are, including independents, are less and less willing to trust the media. 28% is a record low, and that's a problem. If you can't trust the media in your country, then what the heck are we even doing? And we see it in Illinois all the time. They are 100% in Pritzker's pocket. Most of them, not all of them, 100% in Pritzker's pocket. They cover all of his faults and amplify all of his successes. And you still wonder why people don't trust the media anymore. No one else wants to get in trouble from the media, just me.
So Collin, my niece actually just changed jobs, and I won't say what company she's working for, but it's a very large platform that everybody knows. And she's social media. So she's going to be directing social media for their finance section. But what I did have a discussion with her, I said, if you're going to do that, I said, one of the things that particular group does is you constantly see very one-sided titles on everything. Yep. And everything's breaking news, and then it's one-sided. I said, yep. So that company has lost the majority of people I know because you can't believe everything that's on there. Because everything.
Yeah, well, we've talked about it a number of times the last few weeks. I mean, how slanted has even the Tribune been? And they used to be much better than this. I mean, they ripped Dabrowski apart. They were mean to Bailey, mean to Tracy, but then the Democrats announced, and look, here's all their accomplishments. I mean, it's just it's overt. It's a problem.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to our last segment here because we're way over time. This is our OG and Clown of the Week. Who do you guys have you want to give some praise to this week? Maybe a little shade. What do you guys got?
I had two clowns, and they're kind of somewhat related. So there was a leaked email from the American Federation of Teachers where they were talking about Mom Donnie, and one of the quotes that stood out to me are the lines. He said, because Johnson was our candidate, there is no public discussion on the left of what went wrong, but something clearly has gone wrong, and it can't just be attributed to our enemies. So they're, it got leaked. Everybody knows now that, they regret that. He even talks about how Brandon Johnson's polling at 14% approval, which is, unbelievable. So I thought that was funny, definitely clown worthy. And then also Randy Weingarten, who's the president or leader of the American Federation of Teachers, has been making the rounds on her new book. And she talked about in one interview about how she started wearing a paperclip pin on her jacket because the current United States reminds her of the Nazi occupation of Norway. And that's what they did in that era. So just as out of touch as you can get.
Speaking of teachers union, I'm leading off my clowns of the week with the Chicago Teachers Union. This week on Twitter, when no other liberal-leaning group in the entire United States did this, the Chicago Teachers Union decided it was a good idea to praise the recently deceased Black activist Assata Shakur, who was arrested and convicted of killing a New Jersey police officer back in the 70s, escaped from prison, fled to Cuba, was a radical communist, and the Chicago Teachers Union is just praising her on Twitter, and everybody came out and even liberals were coming out and saying what the hell's going on here? Like this, the CTU has officially lost the plot when we're literally talking about Black Liberation Army activists who were killing police officers back in the 1970s. These are who the Chicago Teachers Union employees are telling. Well, not all of them, but this is who the CTU wants, your children to look up to. Something's going on there. So that's Clown of the Week number one. Clown of the Week number two is Ben McDonald, who's a commentator for Major League Baseball on ESPN. He was commentating the Cubs-Padres game because, of course, he was commentating the Cubs game. That's why he's a clown to begin with. But the ESPN decided to promote NHL hockey coming up. And they were trying to make conversation of it, as you do. The NFL does this on their broadcast, etc. It's like, hey, hockey season's coming up. What do you think about that? He's like, I don't know. If you're asking me if I'm going to watch, there's a 0% chance I'm going to watch hockey. That's just terrible. That's just stupid. You're literally broadcasting for a network which is broadcasting hockey, and you're telling your audience oh yeah, hockey's dumb. I don't watch that. Why would you watch that? So this guy, he's a major league idiot. And number three,
the deep cut for a clown this week.
Yeah. Number three, this is kind of in the middle between OG of the week and clown of the week, because the person who's doing this is a clown, but what they're doing, I think, is the right thing. And my, clown of the week, if we're going to call him that, is Senator Dick Durbin, who is officially not accepting his award from the Archdiocese of Chicago, which I believe is the right choice. His political ideology does not align with the Catholic Church on the issues of abortion and a number of other issues. He should not be praised for that, and I think he's doing the right thing by not accepting the award. Those are my clowns and other thing of the week. Thank you.
All right, what else you guys got?
Well, you stole the clowns of the week. I was going to say the same thing about CTU and that ridiculous deal. But Chris, I think I would say I'm going to give OG of the week to this guy who said he's not going to watch hockey. If we want to rebuild trust with the media, they got to be honest with us. That guy was being honest with us. He doesn't want to watch hockey. Tell us that. Let's get the relationship rebuilt.
Versus the other side, where you see during these telecasts, you're like, oh, this new show, Mindhunter, it's the greatest show ever. I watched it last night. It's so amazing. In this show, Mindhunter, where they hunt minds. Okay, back to the game. Like, it is nice to see someone actually being honest for once. So, Tom, I think I'm with you on
I'm
this.
not going to watch it either. So, I'll just come out there and say I'm not watching
Doesn't
that veto
anybody
opener.
in Republican politics know puck? I know Collin doesn't watch hockey. Like he just strikes me a guy who's never watched a game of hockey in his life. He probably watches like lacrosse or something. It's not hockey's not hoity-toity enough for him and his North Suburban night. I expected better from Tom, not Tom Demmer. Tom Demmer, I expected you to be a puck knower, and I'm sorry to say that you apparently are not.
I've seen more Blackhawks games in person than on TV. Let me tell you that.
All right, Chris, I'll let that slide for time, but I'll get you back for that one soon. Don't you worry. All right, let me give a couple OGs and then see if you guys still are good or if you've got some of your own. But Tom, I want to go to one of your coworkers here, Matt Paprocki. He put out a op-ed that I thought was frankly really powerful, talking about the power and the importance of work, and it was all overall good. But there was a segment here that is not something I've heard talked about enough that I want to hear more about, which is the cliff for benefits. I'm not going to say this well because I'm not a policy guy, but according to recent research, 1 in 4 welfare recipients intentionally hold themselves back from career advancements to keep their welfare benefits and avoid losing eligibility. That's a big deal. And I'm not going to blame them for making the right fiscal choice for their family, nor does Matt, to be clear. The point here is policymakers need to do a better job, because he points out that a worker making $54,000 a year, if they get a $1,000 raise in Illinois to $55,000, they would lose up to $25,000 in child care benefits. Why would you do that? So we have a system here that's not set up to incentivize work with these cliffs that happen at certain benchmarks. And I think lawmakers should do something about this in both parties, because if you're a Republican, you want to incentivize people to work and to become more productive and to create generational wealth. And if you're a liberal, you want them to have generational wealth. I think this is something that could be bipartisan. So kudos to IPI and Paprocki for putting it out.
Collin, I have said that specifically directly to Jan Schakowsky about that exact problem, because we've had people that they got a quarter raise and got their child care taken away. And I specifically said it to her on a forum phone call. And she sat there and was like, oh, okay. It's a great, and my point is it needs to be graduated. You need to graduate. So when they make more money, you don't just say, okay, your benefits are done. You take away a little bit of the benefits, but you don't take away their entire raise. I have said this to multiple, not only here in Illinois, multiple US, and it goes on deaf ears.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep amplifying it. I think it's a good point. My other OG is MK Hill. She was holding a sign outside the protests down in Chicago where they're all screaming and yelling, and she had a sign that said, "Democrats hate cops but love Antifa." And they're screaming F you and blowing horns at her and whistles at her. It went viral. I mean, I think too often we let the left sort of own the narrative when it comes to these protests. I'd love to see the right kind of engage in this in a peaceful way, not like the left is, but in a peaceful way to get our side of the argument out. We let them protest us at every press conference. We let them do this where we can't even show up at a press conference without them blowing whistles and yelling and trying to steal the narrative. Listen, good Republican tactics back in the day is we'd send people in a chicken costume, or we'd send them in with a sign. We'd actually do things like this. That's creative and that's politics. So kudos to M for doing it. I'd love to see more Republicans do stuff like this. So OG to her. Clowns, I'll do this fast, but let's see, I'm going to save that one for last. Let's talk about Arizona State Representative John Gillette, who is a Republican, and came out and said that U.S. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal should be hanged. He called it a poor choice of words. He should have said firing squad, which isn't better. If we're going to call out violent rhetoric on the left, then I'm also going to call out violent rhetoric on the right. That is not acceptable, so I'm going to be practice what I preach and call that out. That's clown-worthy and then some. Let's talk about... Illinois Republican Party. I was, I don't know, but putting out these shirts, trying to raise money off of ICE with the ICE baby stuff. I do applaud their creativity, but we should be a little smarter about this and maybe not quite so tone deaf that while in the news there's a lot of controversy over ICE, we're out there trying to raise money off of it. Again, I applaud the creativity, but maybe this is one of those ideas you should have left on the cutting room floor. Let's see. To all the Americans who were yelling horrible things at the European team at the Ryder Cup, grow up. I do like home field advantage. I like the fact that we were, heckle them, have some fun with it. But you hear some of the stuff they were yelling at Rory at his wife. Someone threw a beer bottle at his wife. I mean, come on. This makes all of America look awful. and we're better. Well, I wish, but I hope one of these days we'll be better than that. So clown of the week right there. Stephanie Kifowit for her cognitive dissonance. So when Hegseth came out and said that he was going to hold all service members to the highest male standard in their training, I will admit publicly, I don't agree with it. I'll be real. I do think that men and women are built differently and we have different capabilities when it comes to athletics. But when you have a Democrat come out and say how horrible this is, a very same Democrat who won't admit that, okay, now do women's sports. Like if you, this is what she said. She said this is wrong. It's a disservice. Men and women have, you can't hold women up to the same benchmarks with men when it comes to athletics or what they can do when it comes to physical activities. I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. Now do women's sports. Like, if you believe that's true, then tell me how then somebody who transitions from male to female should be allowed to compete with females, because it's the same thing. I don't think it's okay in the military. I think women should be allowed to be part of it, and they should have different standards. And I don't think it's okay when men play in women's sports. I'm at least consistent in my stance on this.
There's different standards for police, too, in the state of Illinois.
Which there should be. We are built different. We both bring different things to the table.
You're built different.
That's a good thing. Celebrate our differences. Stop trying to pretend they don't exist.
There's a study that proves that you're different from utero. You have advantages in utero.
All right, two more for me, and then we can close down. Second to last one here is the Daily Herald. They're not necessarily my clown here, to be real, but they had to close down commenting on their stories because we just can't even be trusted to comment on stories anymore and not be just complete jackasses. And so they had to completely shut down their comment section. I actually held them up as a positive years ago because I love how they make you sign in under Facebook under yourself in order to comment, because then at least you're putting your name to your comments. I think that's really cool. And for a while, that kept it a little bit more reasonable because we're all willing to be like way worse humans when it's not actually our names and faces tied to it. But even now, even with that, we can't even be trusted to comment on a news source. That's just how much we've degraded as a society, and I hate it. Last one here, Chris, close your ears. But I'm going to, and any Cubs fans too. I'm going to have Lane bring up a graphic here on screen, but they did a study on the percentage of payroll that's spent compared to their revenue on their teams. And you see at the top, of course, the Mets, the Dodgers, some of these other teams. Who comes in at 29th? Only spending 31.6% of their revenue on payroll, the Chicago White Sox. But here, it's not better for the Cubs. Who comes in at 26th? It's the Cubs. I am sick and tired of living in Illinois where we have such low standards. We have an epidemic of low standards and low expectations in this state. We have the 26th and 29th worst when it comes to actually spending the money they take in on the team to give us a winning product on the field. We don't deserve to have winning sports in this state if that's how it is. So Chicago White Sox and a little bit the Cubs, my clown of the week there too. All right, closing thoughts. I've gone way too long. We've gone way too long. Chris, be first here. Give us your closing thoughts for the week.
I'll be brief because we've gone way too long. We got like 3.5 weeks left of petitions, guys. Let's hunker down. Let's get the petitions. Be ready for October 27th. Or if you're more of a November 3rd or 4th kind of guy, maybe you're that. But let's get the petitions. Let's get them to their candidates, and let's call it a day so we can go move on to the important things of campaign season.
Michael?
I'm going to echo that and say, there's a lot of candidates out there that are circulating. They're trying to get on the ballot. They're worried about meeting their numbers. If you're out circulating for somebody, make sure that they know that you're circulating for them. Give them an update on what you have, because there's a lot of question marks out there. And the last thing we want is somebody to show up the day after we file with 75 signatures and say, oh, my bad. So get them to us. Communicate.
It's good advice even in relationships whenever you decide to get in one, Michael. Sharon, what are your final thoughts for the week?
If you can't get enough signatures with the low numbers that are required, you might think about not being a candidate.
Yeah, I had a congressional campaign reach out through a surrogate this week. And if you don't know, the federal laws for getting signatures are way lower than Illinois. To run for Congress, you only need like 600 signatures. If you can't get that in 3 months and you're running for Congress, maybe you shouldn't be running. All right, Tom, you get the final word, my friend. What do you got?
All right, this kind of circles back to our first topic we talked about, which is thinking about these gubernatorial campaigns today. One of the biggest criticisms I have right now of J.B. Pritzker is he's chasing Donald Trump. He's trying to run for president, and he's chasing Donald Trump, talking about every day his message changes. He's grasping at stories, trying to get relevant there. That's not over the long term going to be a sustainable strategy. We should also, as Republicans running against J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, listen to the same weaknesses of strategy. We should not just be chasing J.B. Pritzker every day, going to whatever topic is the latest one to talk about J.B. Pritzker on. We've got to have something independent to say about our own candidates, about our own strategy. We have to have something that's worthwhile for voters to listen to. We have to talk about what's going to be different in the next 4 years. It can't just be chasing the spotlight and chasing the incumbent that's currently in office. That's J.B. Pritzker's weakness. I hope that's not the weakness of Illinois gubernatorial candidates.
All right, wise advice. I should have said one of my clowns is the cigar by Emissary. I don't, or this Emissary cigar. Like, it's been a struggle the whole time to be lit. That's what I get for smoking a cigar when I shouldn't have, because my throat hurts. I get a horrible cigar that I have to fight the whole episode. So I'm cranky. I'm just going to shut this thing down. Thank you, Lane Davis, our producer. Especially thanks to Sharon and Tom for joining us. Michael, Chris, you have to, so whatever. But thanks for being here. We'll catch you guys next week in the smoke-filled room, and here's hoping I get a better cigar.